The number hit the golf world like a thunderbolt. $5 million, not 500,000, not even 1 million. $5 million, the largest penalty ever imposed in the 90-year history of the Masters tournament. And the target of this unprecedented fine? Bryson DeChambeau, the two-time U.S. Open champion, the man who had once boldly proclaimed Augusta National was a par 67 for him. The player who had spent years methodically trying to conquer the one major championship that continued to elude his grasp. The official reason given by Augusta National was technical, a rules violation so obscure and nuanced that even veteran rules officials had to pull out the rule book and study it carefully before rendering judgment. But anyone close to the inner workings of Augusta National, anyone who understood the philosophy and values of the Green Jackets, knew there was much more to this story. This wasn't about a single incident caught on camera during one practice round. This was about a pattern, a history. Years of pushing boundaries, testing limits, and treating the Masters Golf's most sacred tournament like it was nothing more than a giant science experiment. The message Augusta National was sending with this staggering fine was crystal clear, unmistakable, and deliberate. At Augusta National Golf Club, Bryson DeChambeau's rules don't apply. The Masters operates by its own standards, its own traditions, and its own code of conduct. And no player, regardless of how many majors they've won or how much money they've made, is bigger than the tournament itself. The announcement that stopped golf in its tracks. The announcement arrived on a Tuesday morning in early April, just days before the ceremonial first tee shot would signal the beginning of another Masters tournament. It came in the form of a brief, formal statement from the Masters Tournament Committee, bearing the signature of Chairman Fred Ridley, a name that carries enormous weight in the golf world. The subject line was direct and ominous: disciplinary action regarding Bryson DeChambeau. When news of the statement broke, the golf world simply stopped. Social media feeds froze as people tried to process what they were reading. Television commentators interrupted their regular programming. Golf websites crashed from the sudden surge of traffic as fans desperately tried to understand what had happened. The fine was $5 million. Let me put that number in perspective for you. That's the exact same amount that Brooks Koepka, one of the biggest names in professional golf, paid as a charitable donation when he returned to the PGA Tour from LIV Golf. That's enough money to fund junior golf programs across the country for years. That's a sum of money that makes even the wealthiest professional golfers pause and take notice. For DeChambeau, who has earned tens of millions of dollars playing on LIV Golf, the financial impact was certainly significant, but it wasn't crippling. He could pay it. The real damage, the truly devastating blow, wasn't financial at all. It was reputational. It was the message behind the fine that would hurt far more than the money itself. The official reason: a technical rules violation. According to the official statement released by the Masters Tournament Committee, the fine was levied for a violation of Rule 8, 1A in golf's comprehensive rulebook. This particular rule prohibits a player from improving the conditions affecting their stroke. The specific incident that triggered the penalty occurred during a practice round, a time when players are supposed to be familiarizing themselves with the course, working on their game, and preparing for the actual competition. According to multiple sources and witnesses who were present, DeChambeau had been observed testing the surface of a bunker in a manner that went beyond normal preparation. Under a strict interpretation of the rules, his actions could be viewed as attempting to gain an unfair advantage. He wasn't just looking at the bunker or assessing how his ball might react. He was actively testing it, examining it, analyzing it in ways that crossed the line from preparation into something that resembled scientific experimentation. But here's what everyone in golf knows. Practice rounds at major championships happen all the time. Players do all sorts of things to prepare. They test different clubs. They hit multiple balls from the same spot. They examine greens and bunkers and hazards in great detail. So why did this particular incident result in a $5 million fine? Those close to Augusta National understand the real story. This wasn't about a single incident. This was the culmination of years of frustration, years of watching DeChambeau push boundaries. Years of observing behavior that the traditionalists at Augusta National viewed as disrespectful to the game's most prestigious tournament. This was Augusta National saying, "Enough is enough." DeChambeau's carefully worded response. When news of the fine broke, DeChambeau's management team quickly released a statement. The wording was precise, calculated, and clearly drafted by lawyers who understood exactly what was at stake. Bryson respects the Masters tournament and its rules, the statement read. He disputes the characterization of the incident and is reviewing his options. Notice what the statement doesn't say. It doesn't apologize. It doesn't admit wrongdoing. It doesn't express remorse or promise to do better in the future. Instead, it disputes the characterization. It says he's reviewing his options, legal language that suggests possible appeals, possible challenges, possible pushback against Augusta National's decision. The implication was unmistakable. This wasn't over. DeChambeau wasn't going to simply accept this punishment and move on quietly. He was going to fight. The golf world erupts in debate. When news of the $5 million fine spread across the golf world, the reaction was immediate, intense, and deeply divided. Social media platforms exploded with commentary. Twitter, or X as it's now called, lit up with reactions from professional golfers, sports commentators, celebrities, and millions of ordinary golf fans, all weighing in on whether the punishment was justified or excessive. One camp celebrated Augusta National's strong stance. These supporters argued that DeChambeau had been pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior for years. They pointed to his history of trying to gain advantages through equipment modifications, his obsessive preparation methods, and his apparent belief that he could outsmart golf courses through science and mathematics. Finally, one prominent golf analyst tweeted, "Augusta is showing that no player is bigger than the game. DeChambeau has been testing limits for years. This sends exactly the right message." But the other camp condemned the fine as wildly excessive and fundamentally unfair. These critics pointed out that DeChambeau's actions occurred during a practice round, a time when the tournament hadn't even begun, when no official scoring was taking place, when he wasn't competing for prize money or glory. "It's absolutely absurd," one former PGA Tour player tweeted. A practice round? He wasn't even in competition. He wasn't affecting his score or anyone else's. This is clearly Augusta sending a message, and it has nothing to do with the actual rules violation. Another golf commentator wrote, $5 million for testing a bunker surface during practice? That's not justice. That's intimidation. That's Augusta flexing its power because it can. The debate raged for days. Television talk shows devoted entire segments to the controversy. Golf podcasts analyzed every angle. Sports websites published opinion pieces both supporting and condemning the decision. But through all the noise and debate, one thing became increasingly clear. This wasn't really about a rules violation at all. This was about something much deeper. The real message: respect for Augusta National. According to multiple sources close to Augusta National, people who have worked with the club for years and understand its culture and values, the $5 million fine was about sending a message that transcended any single incident. The message was about respect. And in the eyes of Augusta National's leadership, Bryson DeChambeau had been disrespectful for years. Not through overt insults or deliberate provocations, not through trash talk or public criticisms of the golf course, but through his approach to the game itself, an approach that the traditionalists at Augusta National viewed as fundamentally at odds with the spirit and values that the Masters represents. DeChambeau had treated Augusta National like it was a puzzle to be solved rather than a cathedral to be revered. He had approached the course with the mindset of a scientist conducting experiments rather than a golfer respecting tradition. And for an institution as steeped in history, tradition, and protocol as Augusta National Golf Club, that approach was simply unacceptable. The pattern: a history of pushing boundaries. To truly understand why Augusta National levied such an unprecedented fine against Bryson DeChambeau, you have to look at the full history of his relationship with the Masters. This story doesn't begin in 2026 with a bunker incident during a practice round. It begins more than a decade earlier, in 2015, when DeChambeau was still an amateur golfer, the amateur who visited too many times. In 2015, Bryson DeChambeau won the U.S. Amateur Championship, one of the most prestigious titles in amateur golf. That victory earned him several incredible privileges, including an automatic invitation to play in the 2016 Masters tournament. But the invitation came with another, less publicized benefit: the privilege of practicing at Augusta National Golf Club in the months leading up to the tournament. Now, for context, you need to understand that Augusta National is not a public course. You can't just call up and book a tee time. The club is extremely exclusive, extremely private, and access is tightly controlled. For most golfers, playing Augusta National even once in their lifetime would be a dream come true. For years, there was no officially stated limit on how many times players could visit the course before the tournament. Most professional golfers, constrained by their busy tournament schedules and other commitments, would manage maybe 1 or 2 practice visits in the months before the Masters. But Bryson DeChambeau was different. He was still an amateur with a much more flexible schedule, and he decided to take full advantage of his access to Augusta National. Exactly how many times DeChambeau actually played Augusta National before the 2016 Masters has become the stuff of legend in golf circles. The numbers vary depending on who you ask, but they're all remarkable. Some corners of the golf industry insisted he made over 24 trips to Augusta. The Augusta Chronicle, the local newspaper that covers the Masters more thoroughly than any other publication, reported that DeChambeau made 12 documented trips in the 8 months before the tournament, and that number didn't even include the practice rounds during tournament week itself. DeChambeau himself, when asked about his preparation during tournament week, said he had played the course 10 times prior to the competition. "I've been very fortunate to do that and gained a lot of experience," DeChambeau said during a press conference. "I would say in preparation, I couldn't tell you an exact number, but those 10 rounds definitely did help me understand the golf course better. And the practice clearly paid dividends." During the second round of the 2016 Masters, DeChambeau, still an amateur competing against the best professional golfers in the world, was just one shot off the lead. He was in contention to potentially win the Masters as an amateur, which would have been one of the greatest stories in golf history. Then, disaster struck at the 18th hole. DeChambeau made a triple bogey, a devastating score that dropped him down the leaderboard. But he still made the cut, still earned low amateur honors, and turned professional the very next week, capitalizing on the exposure and momentum from his Masters performance. The rule change that followed. But while DeChambeau was celebrating his successful amateur Masters debut and launching his professional career, the establishment at Augusta National was not amused by what had transpired. The Green Jackets, the term used to describe the members and leadership of Augusta National, named after the iconic green jacket awarded to Masters champions, had watched DeChambeau make trip after trip to their golf course. They had observed his methodical, almost obsessive preparation. They had seen him treat Augusta National like a laboratory where he could conduct experiments and gather data. And they didn't like it. A year later, in 2017, when U.S. mid-amateur champion Matt Parziale received his Masters invitation packet in the mail, it contained something that previous amateur invitees had never seen. A notification that he would be limited to a maximum of 5 practice visits to Augusta National prior to the tournament. Parziale later discussed this change on the Drop Zone podcast, and his comments shed light on exactly why the new restriction had been implemented. "It used to be unlimited," Parziale explained, "but someone abused it." He didn't need to say who that someone was. Everyone in golf knew. Bryson DeChambeau had pushed an unwritten rule until it became a written one. He had taken advantage of unlimited access until Augusta National felt compelled to formally restrict it, and for forcing their hand, for making them codify what had previously been understood through tradition and common sense, DeChambeau earned the quiet but deep resentment of the Green Jackets. This was the first sign that DeChambeau's relationship with Augusta National might be troubled. It wouldn't be the last. The 2026 fine, how it all unfolded. Fast forward to 2026, DeChambeau is now a 2-time U.S. Open champion, one of the biggest names in professional golf, and a prominent player on LIV Golf, the Saudi-backed rival league that has split the professional golf world. The fine itself was announced without the fanfare you might expect for such a significant penalty. It was buried in a Tuesday afternoon statement that many golf fans almost missed entirely. There were no press conferences, no dramatic announcements, no public spectacle. The Masters Tournament Committee, in a rare display of public discipline, had levied the largest penalty in the tournament's 9-decade history against one of the game's most polarizing figures. The official reason cited that violation of Rule 8(1)(a) during a practice round. DeChambeau had been observed testing the surface of a bunker in a way that, according to the committee, crossed the line from legitimate preparation to potential advantage-seeking behavior that violated the rules. But the true significance of the fine wasn't in the specific rule that was violated, it was in the number itself. $5 million. That's the same amount Brooks Koepka paid to return to the PGA Tour from LIV Golf. That's the same amount that could fund junior golf programs for years. That's the same amount that sent an unmistakable message to every professional golfer in the world. Augusta National was not messing around. DeChambeau's team responds. When DeChambeau's management team released their carefully crafted response, the golf world analyzed every word like it was a legal document, because in many ways, it was. "Bryson respects the Masters tournament and its rules," the statement read. "He disputes the characterization of the incident and is reviewing his options." The statement was careful, measured, and notably lacking in any admission of wrongdoing or expression of remorse. DeChambeau wasn't apologizing. He wasn't accepting responsibility. He was, in his own way, fighting back. The phrase, reviewing his options, was particularly significant. It suggested that DeChambeau and his legal team were exploring possible appeals, possible legal challenges, possible ways to push back against what they clearly viewed as an unjust punishment. The golf world chooses sides. The announcement of the $5 million fine created an immediate and dramatic split in the golf community. On one side were those who celebrated Augusta National's firm stance. These supporters argued that DeChambeau had been systematically pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior for years, that he had shown a pattern of trying to gain advantages through methods that, while perhaps technically legal, violated the spirit of the game. This is exactly what needed to happen, one prominent golf instructor wrote on social media. DeChambeau has treated golf like it's a video game he can hack. Augusta is reminding everyone that this is a game built on honor, tradition, and respect. No amount of science or data analysis can replace those values. On the other side were those who condemned the fine as wildly excessive and fundamentally unfair. These critics pointed out several key facts. DeChambeau's actions occurred during a practice round, not during actual competition. His behavior didn't affect his official score or anyone else's. The punishment seemed grossly disproportionate to the alleged violation. It's completely absurd. One former PGA Tour player argued in a television interview, a practice round? He wasn't even competing. He wasn't affecting tournament play. This isn't about rules enforcement. This is about Augusta flexing its institutional power and putting a player they don't like in his place. That's not justice. That's intimidation. The debate intensified as more voices joined the conversation. Some pointed out that other players had done similar things during practice rounds without facing any punishment. Others argued that DeChambeau's history of boundary pushing made him a deserving target for stricter enforcement. But beneath all the arguments about fairness and proportionality, there was a deeper truth that many observers recognized. This wasn't really about a bunker test during a practice round. This was about respect, or the perceived lack thereof. The respect question: what Augusta National really values. According to multiple sources with deep connections to Augusta National, people who have worked with the club for decades and understand its culture, the $5 million fine was fundamentally about sending a message that transcended any specific rules violation. The message was about respect. And in the collective judgment of Augusta National's leadership, Bryson DeChambeau had been disrespectful to the Masters for years. But what does disrespect mean in this context? DeChambeau had never publicly insulted Augusta National. He had never refused to follow their dress code or skipped mandatory player obligations. He had never done anything overtly disrespectful in the traditional sense. The disrespect, according to those close to Augusta National, was more subtle but no less significant. It was in his approach to the game itself. DeChambeau had treated Augusta National like it was a complex problem to be solved through data analysis and scientific methodology, rather than a sacred ground to be respected and revered. He had approached the Masters with the mindset of an engineer reverse engineering a system rather than a golfer honoring a tradition. He had famously called Augusta National a par 67 for him, suggesting that with his length off the tee and his analytical approach, he could essentially make the course play easier than its traditional par of 72. To many observers, this wasn't confidence. It was arrogance. He had spent countless hours mapping every inch of the golf course, analyzing slope percentages, studying green speeds, treating the hallowed grounds of Augusta National like a laboratory for his experiments in golf optimization. And for an institution as deeply rooted in tradition, history, and protocol as Augusta National Golf Club, this approach was seen as fundamentally at odds with what the Masters represents. The Masters isn't just a golf tournament. It's a celebration of the game's history and traditions. It's a reminder that golf, at its core, is about more than just hitting a ball into a hole as efficiently as possible. It's about honor, integrity, sportsmanship, and respect for the game's heritage. When DeChambeau approached Augusta National like it was merely an optimization problem to be solved, he was in the eyes of the Green Jackets missing the entire point.